Hello, this is Robbie Mitchell here from Head in the Cloud Development. Today I'm going to show you how to use Google's Distance Calculation API from within a user event script in NetSuite's SuiteScript 2.1 API. This video is being recorded in November 2023 on NetSuite version 2023.2. So, if you're still interested, the specific goals of this video are to walk you through the setup of a new SDF project in VS Code with the bonus of TypeScript compilation, to enable you to have SuiteScript 2.1 API IntelliSense as you type. We'll walk through a real-life example of using Google's Distance API to calculate the driving mileage between a warehouse location and a shipping address on a sales order. We'll demonstrate how to upload, implement, and test our script in NetSuite. This video is intended for NetSuite developers and administrators. You should have the administrator role in NetSuite to do everything I cover here. And you should at least be familiar with JavaScript and web technologies here. And I assume that you've at least looked at the SuiteScript API before. So first up, let's download the software we need. The IDE we'll be using today is VS Code by Microsoft. Unlike WebStorm, it is totally free. You can download it at code.visualstudio.com/download. Second, you'll need to have Node.js installed. You can get it for free also at nodejs.org. I recommend downloading whatever the current long-term support version is. I believe it's version 20 currently. And finally, if you want to save yourself some typing, you can download the script files we'll be using for this video from our website here at headintheclouddev.com/code/demo-ssv2 google-distance.zip. So if you haven't already done so, go ahead and install VS Code and Node.js, and then let's open up VS Code and get started. So first in Visual Studio Code, if you haven't already done so, you'll need to install the SuiteCloud extension by Oracle NetSuite. We'll be using this to upload our stuff to NetSuite. Once you've got that installed, we can initialize a new account customization project. The way the SuiteCloud menu works in VS Code is it's all through the View command palette. And from here, if you type in SuiteCloud, you'll see all the SuiteCloud options that come with the plugin. So we're going to start with Create Project. We're going to create a new folder called Google Distance Video. And next it's going to ask us what type of project. We want to choose Account Customization Project. Project name, I'm just going to call it Google Distance Video. Do you want to include unit testing? No, we're not interested in that right now. So then it asks if we want to open it in a new window or this window. I'm just going to choose this window. So then we kind of see what it gives us here with the basic project. Next it wants us to link it to an account. So we'll go ahead and do that. And so it's going to show you your existing authentication methods. If you haven't set one up yet, you can use New Authentication ID and link it to your NetSuite account. I already have my test account set up here, so I'm going to select that. Okay, and now to get TypeScript working, there's a couple of additional files we'll want to add in. And it's probably easier if you just copy them over from the zip file that I provide with this video. So the files we need are package.json and tsconfig.json. So I'm just going to drag and drop them right into the main root folder here. And once you have package.json, let's take a quick look at it. This just shows what project dependencies are needed from Node for this. So it's really just our NetSuite types module and TypeScript itself here. So to install this, we'll use the terminal, and we just need to run npm install. And if you haven't already done so, you probably need to have TypeScript installed globally. So to do that, you would just do npm install -g TypeScript and press enter. You can see which version of TypeScript you have installed if you just type in tsc-v. Just to note, the version here doesn't need to match the version here. So once we have our Node modules installed, let's take a quick look at tsconfig.json. This file controls how TypeScript files are handled. Here you'll see the ES 2021 JavaScript version we're compiling to, but the most important thing to note here is the folder structure. So here it says that we're compiling files in the source TypeScript folder into the output folder, source file cabinet, SuiteScript's Google Distance demo. So that's where our compiled JavaScript is going to end up here. So now before we start coding, let's look in NetSuite and talk about what we want our script to do. So I'm going to go to a sales order here in my NetSuite demo account. So here I have a sales order, and the location on it is set to our San Francisco warehouse. Before we look where it's shipping to, let's take a look at that location record. So I want to mention that when using Google's Distance Matrix API, you can choose to use it either with the latitude and longitude coordinates or just the text address. If you do have latitude and longitude on your records, it's better to use that. But in this example, I'm going to assume you don't have the coordinates, and we're just going to use the text address. So back on the sales order, we can see it's shipping to an address in Cupertino, California. So the idea is that our script should calculate the driving distance from our warehouse in San Francisco to this address and store that number of miles here in this shipping distance custom field. And just to note on that custom field, I have also included that in the download file. So if you look under source and objects, you can either copy this file over to your project as well, or you can create the field on your own in your user interface and just add it to your project manually. All it is a transaction body field that's a decimal number for distance in miles. So to start, let's create a new script. And before we create our script file, we need to create our TypeScripts folder. So look, it's under the source folder. So I'm just going to do a new folder, TypeScripts. And then in that, let's do a new file. And let's call it sales order shipping distance ue.ts. So first, of course, we have to do our block comment here at the top of the script. I always like to put what the script file is in case we see it later in a debugger where it doesn't tell us the file name. And then, of course, our two mandatory script tags for the script type and the API version. Now for IntelliSense, we always want to import the entry points module here from our nTypes module. And it's just highlighting it in red because I haven't used it yet. And for our script here, we're going to use the before submit entry point. So first, let's think about what context we want our script to run in. We definitely want to run this in create mode. We could also set it to run in edit mode as well, just in case the address on the sales order changes. Here's how we do that. Okay, so now the fields we want to read from the sales order to calculate the distance are the shipping address and the location address. So let's start by getting the location ID and the shipping address into variables here. Now, when developing in NetSuite, it's a good rule of thumb to always do things iteratively. In other words, don't code the whole script and then try to test it all at once. It's much better to upload it and test things bit by bit. So let's start with this. Let's log what we find here, and then let's deploy this script. So to deploy the script, the first thing we need to do is compile it. So let's just open a terminal, type in TSC. And when you do, you should see the JavaScript version appear here in the file cabinet folder like we talked about. Let's just take a quick look at it. Oh well, it's empty because I didn't even save my TypeScript. So I always forget in VS Code you do actually have to save the file. It doesn't save automatically like WebStorm does. So let's compile it again. And now, here we go. So this is kind of what a normal SuiteScript looks like in JavaScript. So to create the script in NetSuite, I still find it easier to upload the file and then deploy it from within the UI. So that's what we're going to do here. So we can use the command palette again just to upload this file. You can use the upload file option. And it's warning you that the existing file will be overwritten if there is one. Click continue. So it says it's trying to upload it. And it was successful. Great. So now in NetSuite, let's do new script. And sales order shipping distance UE. I'm going to copy and paste the script name because I already typed it in here. I'm just going to leave these other fields blank for now, that's fine. And we'll do deploy script. Applies to sales order. I'm just going to leave it in testing mode now so it only runs for me. I'm going to save this. And so to test it, all we should have to do is edit and save this sales order. Okay, the sales order is saving. And on our script deployment, here is our execution log. It shows our location is ID2, and our ship address is the one in Cupertino, California. So far, so good. Next, we need to look up the address from the location. So let's see how to do that. To do that, we need to use the search module. And then we'll come down here and say const location values equals search.lookup field. Type is location. ID is location ID. And the columns we want to look up. We need the address from the address subrecord. So it's address.address. So whenever you do a lookup field, it's always good to log the results. So let's add another log here. Now again, let's test this as we have it to make sure that we're getting those values back correctly. Just going to upload the file again. And edit and save my sales order again. Back on our script deployment, we can see the location values that the address is coming back correctly. It includes some line breaks, but that's fine. Great, so that's looking good. So next, in order to use the Google Distance API, we need to set the API up in the Google Cloud Console. So it's really easy. I'll show you how. So I'm logged in, and I've got a project here that's called SuiteScript Demo. I'm going to click on APIs and Services. And first we need to make sure the API is enabled. So you can click this plus icon here to enable APIs, and just search for distance. And it's called the Distance Matrix API. So when you find it, yours will probably say enable here. Just make sure this API is enabled. I've already got it enabled. And the last step is we need to create an API key. So back on the APIs and Services screen, if you go to Credentials, you can click the Create Credentials button. We're going to create an API key. I'm going to copy the key itself, and then we're going to configure this key. Now I'll mention that when you're doing server-side scripting, trying to restrict the key by a website doesn't really work. But what you can do is you can restrict it to certain APIs. So I'm going to restrict it only to the distance matrix API and save that. And that should be it. So let's plug this API key into our script now. So the distance API requires a couple of parameters. One being the address, but the other thing we need to define is just the unit of measure. So here we want it in miles, so we're going to do unit as imperial. Oops, I just noticed I'm doing this in my JavaScript file, so let me just move this into my TypeScript. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now to use the API, we need the HTTPS module, so let's import that. And now to do the request, we'll call https.get. It's just one option, it's the URL. So the base URL is maps.googleapis.com/maps/API/distance matrix/JSON. And then we have to plug in a few parameters here now. First thing we need is the origin. So it's origins plural, and we want that to be our location address. So I'm just going to use it directly from the lookup. Location values address.address. Oh, looks like it auto-completed that for me. Great. Second, the destination. Destinations plural equals the ship address. Third, units is our units variable, or a unit variable. And finally, the key is our API key. And that's it. Sorry, it's a bit long to try to show on one screen, but just to show it again, there it is. And of course, before we try to parse it, let's log what we have so we can test it and see what we get back. We'll log the response code and the response body. Save that, and then let's upload this and test it. Okay. So again, I just have to edit and save the sales order. And here's our response. We got a 200, which is successful. And let's look at this for a minute. Maybe I'll zoom in so you can see it better. It looks like it gives us back the distance here, both in miles and meters, as well as the driving duration in hours and minutes. So here it is in miles. This is in meters. And you've also got a duration here, 47 minutes. I wonder if this is the number of seconds, maybe. And the status is OK, so that's great. Now let me point out one thing. The miles value here is a string, 42.6 mi, whereas the field we created is expecting just a decimal number. So we're going to need to parse out this mi text here. But that's OK, that's easy to do. Also, I can tell you from experience that we also want to parse out any commas in case the value is like 1,000 miles or more here. So now let's parse out this response and get the data we need. So we'll use json.parse on response.body. And let's tell TypeScript here what we're expecting here. And now we could define this as an interface, but I'm just using it once here, so I'm just going to do it inline. So from looking at the data here, let me show you how to represent this rows data, because this is what we care about in TypeScript. I'm going to say as rows. In rows there are elements. And this is an array of objects. And rows is an array of objects. So in elements, again just referring back to what we have here, we have distance and duration and a status. We don't really care about the duration here. Let's just talk about the distance. Distance, we have text that's a string, and we have value that's a number. And then we also have status, which is a string. Outside of elements, we also have a status on the overall request, don't we? That's also a string. You know what, this is a little bit long. Let's go ahead and put this in an interface. I'll just show you how that works quickly. So what we can do is we'll call it, we'll just come down here and say interface distance response and paste what we've got. And we can just kind of break this out to make it a bit more readable. So it's really just two things. It's rows and a status at this point. And then I can just copy this and say json.parse as idistance response. It makes things a little bit cleaner, doesn't it? So now to parse the data, first thing let me tell you, this isn't always going to be successful. Believe it or not, you probably have some bad address data in your system, and if you try to calculate something that's invalid, Google will let you know. So the first thing we check here is that distance data.status is okay. If it's not, we don't even want to try to parse it. And then we also want to check the distance data, the first row and the first element in that row also had a status. We want to make sure that's also okay. If those are both okay, then we can read our miles from, again, the first row and the first element in that row and the distance text. And then again, this to parse out miles, we can just use replace space mi, just replace it with an empty string. And then also replace a comma, if there is one, with an empty string. And if you've got multiple commas for really big numbers, then you can use a regular expression here, but that's a bit less common. So now that we have that data parsed, we can set it into our field. There we go. So let's save this and compile it and test it. Oops. I do need to select the JavaScript file to upload it. The JavaScript file is looking good here as well. Okay, so that's uploaded. So let's do our final test here, hopefully. I'm going to save the sales order again. So we got our 200 response again. And if we then check the shipping tab, we should see that yes, it set 42.6 miles in here as the shipping distance. So that is great. And that's all there is to it. I hope you've enjoyed the demo. Feel free to get in touch if you have any questions. Otherwise, we'll see you at SuiteWorld. Thank you for watching.